everybody. So, feed options for sheep. They're really pretty simple. They tend to prefer broadleaf weeds. So if you're out grazing pastures, you'll tend to notice if you watch them, that's what they're going to pick at. This is very helpful if you're wanting to weed a pasture. Send the sheep out on them instead of the cows first. Another option is you can actually, what some people do is they'll send cows through first, the cows will eat the grass, the sheep then have no choice, which they're going to eat the weeds anyway, but then they're also not eating the grass, so they will pick out the weeds, eat those, and then let the pasture recover. If it's a weed, you're going to want goats. That tends to be a goat preferred. Options for sheep. If you don't have access to grass, so hay, they're ruminants, they have to have hay, roughage, forage, basically with a ruminant, and we'll talk more about this when we get to cows next week, but you're really actually feeding the bacteria in their rumen, which is breaking down their feed, which is actually feeding them. So you're actually feeding to feed the bacteria in the animal. So, options for hay. Prairie hay is okay. It's not great, but it will meet a dry use requirements. You might have to supplement with some grain a little bit, but it shouldn't be too bad. What we tend to do is we actually tend to feed alfalfa. Part of that is because we can grow the alfalfa, and by we, I mean my dad, because that's where my sheep are, is with my dad. And we also have horses. So the horses tend to get the prairie hay because that's what they need, and then the ewes just get the different grades of alfalfa. Alfalfa has different quality grades, which affects the nutrition in the alfalfa. Usually first cutting is kind of the crappiest. It's not very good. It's very stiff, very coarse, not as high in protein. Also tends to be harder for them to break down, digest. Therefore, that's what they get typically during the dry. They don't need as much nutrition, but they still need some hay. It has a lot of that extra stuff. The more cuttings you get off the alfalfa in a year, not over the lifetime, but in a year, the better the quality. So you hear a lot about third and fourth cutting. That's about the max you usually get around here. And that's really, really good alfalfa. You don't get as much of it, though, either. It's very leafy. It's very easily digestible. That's what we're saving for the times but after lambing. They're getting that really good alfalfa. It's got really good protein, high in protein. It just gives them that nutrient boost that they need to maintain their own weight and nurse 2 lambs, preferably. Other options. We use full corn. We don't tend to crack it. The sheep don't need it cracked. My dad doesn't have access to a grain mill easily, and he found that when we did crack it, it just got too hot. We started to have too many issues with clostridials and overeating and just bad poop. So we leave it whole. They crack it fine on their own as it's going through. Unlike cows, like if you walk through a cow pasture, you can tell if they've had whole corn. Sheep seem to chew it up better. It doesn't come through the digestive tract whole. So that's the other reason we can leave it whole. We also use, during specific times of year, so I actually have a bag of creep feed here right now, because I've got lambs that actually just weaned. Today is their official wean day. So they're getting a formulated feed specifically for their nutrient needs as weaned lambs. As they grow, we'll transition them to, it's called a 34% protein pellet, and they get a mix of that, corn, and hay, usually alfalfa, during their finish grower period. The ewes, once they're done milking, they just get hay. They think they need grain, they really don't. So that's kind of your options. We'll get more into the actual feeding specifics. You can do alfalfa pellets, which is what we do when we're in lambing jugs. Now, we used to do little square bales of hay, but as my dad has gotten older and his labor has moved out of the house, he doesn't mess with square bales anymore. I don't know why. So he actually does the alfalfa pellets in the lambing jugs, so they're still getting that protein. They're still on the same basic diet, but it's way easier for them to clean up and manage. That's pretty much it. I do know people have fed silage to sheep. Totally okay. Trying to think other options. So yeah, anything else you've heard, drop them in the comments. I'll respond.